I'd like to say a big thank you to our sponsors, Talent Insights. Talent Insights are Australia's leading specialist data recruitment business. With offices in Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane, they're experts at providing recruitment strategy and building data teams for clients across industries Australia-wide. They provide recruitment solutions for all roles across the data lifecycle, including data engineering, data science, advanced analytics, customer and marketing insights, business intelligence, data product managers, and data governance. They're skilled at finding the best permanent and contract hires for your business needs, as well as statement of work, project-focused data resources. At Talent Insights, relationships matter most. I can say from first-hand experience, Talent Insights are fantastic to work with. Whether you're a business leader within an HR network or a specialist data candidate, Talent Insights should be the first company you turn to for all your data recruitment needs. Find them at talentinsights.com.au. Hi, and welcome to Data Futurology. This is Felipe Flores. Today, we have a super exciting episode about how we can create data analytics capability within an organization and then find opportunities to create spin-off companies that focus on commercializing that product across an industry. For this, I couldn't have thought of a better guest. We got Joanna Marsh here to talk to us about her journey and how she went from developing capability for data analytics in real estate, leading that. So she has been the general manager of innovation and advanced analytics at Investa Property Group. And now, additionally to that, she's the CEO and co-founder at Exomnia. Jo, thank you so much for being with us. How are you going today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
I am so excited to hear about your journey and covering what you're doing now is amazing. And having built the capability in Investa, maybe we'll start with that, and then keen to hear how the transition was to now having a company that is creating products across the industry. But maybe let's start with a bit of the Investa background. How was it being general manager for innovation and advanced analytics in this real estate company? What was that journey like?
It's a good question. And it's one of the things that now that I'm on the other side of, I would call it a career pivot, although other people would call it the most ridiculous thing that's ever been in a development plan that they've ever seen. And I remember I literally wrote in my development plan 2 years ago in the corporate system, run a venture-backed global analytics company worth more than $1 billion. And at that point, when I pushed submit, first of all, I didn't know how audaciously naive that statement was at that point of time. And I also didn't know what it was going to take from there to actually have it come into fruition. And the first thing to say about Investa is, my boss at the time is amazing. She took a deep breath in my development plan meeting. And I could see the double blink, and she was so great. And she went, okay, most people go, I want some additional Excel training. This is new. Okay, what can we do about this? And at that point, I'd been leading innovation and advanced analytics for a couple of years in Investa. So it wasn't necessarily a surprise. And I'll go through the projects we were doing. But I guess just to say that this is what it looks like when you support your people's development inside of a corporate. And not everyone wants to necessarily get the next role or be on the executive or do these sorts of things. And it's kind of the new world where a lot of people want or have a side hustle. That diminishes it to call it that. I don't mean it that way. They have something on the side they're passionate about. And it could be something that doesn't make money. It could be something like, we volunteer or we spend time in our children's school. And there's probably a continuum from that to launch and grow a unicorn and take it up a venture-backed curve in, advanced analytics, data science, and AI. So I'm probably the extreme, which made it a little more difficult. But the support was huge. And I think the support and commitment from the executive at Investa and then the board, everyone, was really around my career development. It wasn't as much around, the opportunity or all these other things. And I kept pitching it that way. And so the first thing to say is, probably it really was, we're going to back Joanna's career development, even though it looks non-traditional. Especially given, I'm 42. I have 2 kids, 5 and 6, Fox and Maverick. And women in rising corporate careers in really good companies who are doing well, right? We don't step out and start startups. It's too risky. You know, like I've got my kids, I've got this whole world, especially in the technical realm. And if you look at just the pure statistics, even just women who run venture-backed companies, couple percent, right? But women in analytics, AI, deep tech, and then you add women in property, you're looking at like, and so I couldn't have done it without kind of the support given where I am in my life. I could have done it at 25, right? Or I could probably do it at 55. But right now it's this kind of crunch time in your late 30s, early 40s. And so that really supporting, it's not just me, it's also really supporting women in STEM, women in venture-backed companies, because we couldn't necessarily do that. So that's the first thing to say is there was an alignment around my dreams and goals. So that's cool. That's just really cool.
And it's so interesting because I've only seen this type of setup very few times. Like I see it as quite rare. But I think something that we can organizations can do a lot more of identify talented, capable individuals and together jointly crafting a path for them that looks like this. But in the other times that I've seen this setup, generally it has been the idea of the spin-off company has been something that aligns to the vision of a CEO of the initial company, or a strategic direction, aligns to a strategic direction set by the board, where the company will be, the spin-off company will be supporting that, or enabling something that can't happen necessarily in the mothership, that needs a kind of like a separate innovation sort of team and can become a company as a utility for the industry. But I love it that in your case, it was more, and I'm sure some of the other items are ticked off as well, but first and foremost about your career development. So that says so much about the goals that you picked up until that point. In the couple of years to even kind of like put it on the table for people to have that backing. How long was it percolating in your mind that this could be something that you'd be excited about taking on?
It's a good question. So I am quite structured in my career planning. I have been for a while. And so for me, I've been in 18 years in real estate, started in banking, have a neuroscience degree from Harvard. And then, they like Ivy League kids with science degrees. So I had to go thrash through learn not only of banking, finance, that whole world, but also real estate and the nuances in real estate. So massive learning curve. And I think I remember literally in a big meeting asking like what a quarter was, like a calendar quarter. And everyone just looked at me going, oh my God, this person is like, how do we even have this person as one of our analysts? So anyway, came up the curve in that, and then went, okay, I started our first property company, and I didn't know what data was at the time. I just knew our property company, we bought these little multifamily assets. They were like 10, 20 unit little assets in the US, multifamily, and we had to find them 2 turns off the highway. I had a whole little strategy, right? And we had to get them before the people that were better capitalized could get them. So when I left the bank to start that, I didn't know it was data, but we had a Google Earth thing, we geocoded, we had every site. Then we went down to, okay, what are the triggers that would have the owner, want to sell these assets? So for example, this was in Florida, the lien data is public. So the first mortgage and then the second mortgage as a percentage of the value as given by the state or the tax value. So we had flags. We were pulling all the data off. I had a calculation, then we had a flag that went, hey, now this is covered up over the 80% loan to value. They're going to be overcapitalized, right? So that was one. We had another one, which was, deferred maintenance. A lot of these properties were owned by a family might own 1 or 2 or 3. A lot of times they didn't put in sufficient maintenance. So we knew there was going to be a roof capital call. They probably wouldn't have the capital for it. And so they flagged, and then we called them. So we were originating all these deals, and then we had weighted models on how we were going to do this, right? So we basically re-derived it. And this was, I was 27 years old, a long time ago now. We re-derived it. And I didn't know that was data science and data analytics and pipelines and stuff and visualizations. I didn't even know. Yeah. So we had to wind up the company because of the GFC, and we couldn't get any more funding from the banks after Lehman. So I came down to Australia and I started in a role at Dexis, running strategy and CapTrans and that sort of thing, back with their prior CEO. And so the first thing I did is I went, okay, we need to figure out what to buy. So get out the maps and start doing the thing, right? And I didn't know this was an odd way to do it. And had I known what I know now, I would have tidied up the property company and kept the analytics company because it was really early and different. So my whole story with analytics from a business side is literally from the field level as an information advantage. Yeah. So it's been a long time coming, but I didn't know what it was. So then we were running investment, I went to Lend-Lease and then we started running innovation, and it got more and more digital. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is pretty obvious. We have a valuation in real estate. There's only 100 fields, 300 transformation. Like, this isn't that hard. And then I was going, well, if you have 10 comps and I have 100, then I win. So we started just working through all of it. And so I came from an investment background, and I basically started getting language from data science to wrap around the things I already knew, if that makes sense. Yeah. So then we started doing actual data science work in innovation versus kind of the design thinking, because I thought, well, design thinking and qual is really great, but I'm going to interview 30 people. We're going to get all the qual insights. What about the digital exhaust from people's actions that's reflected in data? So then we started looking at that. And then I met my co-founder, Will. He was working at a consulting company for an AI and ML consulting company, Spark Beyond at the time. We did some great work together. We were doing these project-based advanced analytics projects. They were very expensive. We spent the first 80% just getting the data. It was, in real estate, there is no Bloomberg. It's like the stock market before NASDAQ came in 71 and blew open the information, right? So you can't even aggregate. And there's some amazing data sets, external data sets, internal data sets, and open data sets, but they're not joined. And there's no templates. There's no, so we were basically reinventing it from scratch. And what became very clear is that without a data innovation surface like Bloomberg or something, it was so expensive. And I always get this word wrong. What's the word? Operationalization?
Operationalization.
That one. Inside these companies, even with the best of intent. I mean, we're working with Oxford and we were deploying billions of dollars off the back of the models, buying assets, and great. But that operationalization part that I say wrong, was really hard. And the team moved on and the pipelines were great, but then you had to have the technical talent to maintain them, hideously expensive. So we realized this actually needs to be an industry utility, like you said. So that's when the idea of it needed to have way more funding than any one individual company from an ROI standpoint could fund it. Yeah. I was just unwilling to ask for the money because it was like, I could only spread it across N number of assets. Exactly. And it's just not a fiduciary responsibility and I was looking obviously at, from an innovation standpoint, I want to drive budget down and efficiency in the business up. So long story short, we started looking at how to create it as a standalone company. And we looked at doing a proper spin out, and we hired some great consultants to help us kind of look through it. And what we quickly realized is it's actually too non-core. The talent you need, the way you need to do it, the funding, the VC funding is actually it's not an adjacency. It's really different. And so we decided an actual spin out wouldn't work. But my idea was, okay, what if we outsource the entire advanced analytics function, not the internal data architecture, none of that, but the actual analytics, outsourced it and defrayed that cost off the balance sheet completely for Investa. Then they would get the benefit of all of that work and the project work back in as the foundational partner and customer. So we worked through all of that. It took 18 months to work through. Investa had external legal, I had legal. We had to work through all of it. So there was a couple of components there, which I can go into if you're interested. One of the reasons we did it this way is I wanted to set precedent for everyone that maybe has an idea or is doing something and they haven't asked because they don't think they can, or they think if they raise it, the company will then come in and swoop and try to get the IP, because that is a risk, right? Yeah. So I was very upfront for a couple of reasons. One, because that's how I am. And also two, to set the precedent and the track record so that anyone in real estate, like there's track record in consulting and maybe some of the tech companies and universities. When Stanford, say, spun out Google and got, 2%, there's not a lot in real estate at all. We couldn't find precedent. So we wanted to set precedent. So that was the second one. And then the third one is, I know what the 14 lawyers from the venture capital company on the other side of that C round, as we take this thing up the curve, are going to do in the DD rooms, because I run corporate venture for Investa. So I know what these DD rooms are like. And I know they're going to trace it right back to this moment. And they're going to say, tell me the IP story. But the entire thing kind of had a beautiful epic romance at the end where Investa is the first customer. Investa isn't on the cap table, but is the first customer and gets benefits from that. We've defrayed all the cost off the balance sheet. I still work there. And the learnings are amazing because I'm literally coached CEO, high growth tech startup in one world. And then I walk back in kind of with the new lens the very next day and I look at it differently. So it's an amazing development opportunity for the talent.
Amazing opportunity. And I love the way that you structured it. How did you navigate those trade-offs and those decisions with Investa? Maybe we can go into that first and getting the support and then navigating these tricky discussions.
It was tricky. I think the first thing that really worked is just to be really open, honest, and upfront about it, right? To not hide anything from the very moment of literally writing it in my development plan, but also just saying, look, this is what I believe is best for Investa. We now invest in a data-driven world in real estate. The industry is digitizing quickly. This is really expensive. I am extremely commercial, so I'm looking at protecting the P&L, protecting like the way for Investa. So I said, you need this. It isn't there. You can't buy it. You could cobble it together through a lot of different enterprise level solutions, but it would be really expensive, and the technical team would have to be huge, right? So I was explaining my philosophy from a commercial standpoint the entire time, and they really got it, because I was like, there are other ways to do this, but in the spirit of open innovation, we are innovating around a problem we have, and then we're going to innovate the solution. This one just looks really different from any other partnership or any other thing. And I think the other thing in there that was something that I just so appreciate about Investa, and also on Exomnia's side, because we had a team there, is kind of when it got hard, and not by hard, I don't mean negative. What I mean is unclear. When it got gray, everyone just took one step forward and went, okay, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? What's the best? And so and then everyone went, I can live with that. Okay. And then we went one step forward, and it was exacerbated because, as you know, startups can't deal with enterprise MSAs regardless.
Yeah.
Like, even if you're like, And so there's so many things. We had to get insurance. We had to get like what's the cyber plan? What's the privacy policy? So, and then eventually, and we were holding, because we had funding ready for Exomnia, and it was getting held up month, just because we were working through. I probably was a bit optimistic about the time that it was going to take to do this new kind of innovation. So I was holding up funding until finally I just said to Investa, I was like, we need to land somewhere because we have to take in the capital. And that was the bit where they went, we get it. And so there was 5 things outstanding, and I just went, I'm fine with all of them except number 4. They went, I'm fine with that. We cut it, and we locked it down.
Exactly.
So the team was really extraordinary.
That's amazing. And I think one of the main things that happens in startups and in setting up startups is the sometimes like over optimism around the timings, and essentially like everything is harder than what people expect going into it. So perseverance, I think it's almost more important than anything else, just around to like keep at it until you get there, being outcomes driven as you have been. That's an amazing way to navigate that. And the support from Investa is amazing. I love that they're as a foundational customer. And what were their thoughts about becoming an investor as well?
So they have the right to look at every round, right? Mm-hmm. We did that. Yeah. We thought through it quite, I guess, deeply and intentionally about it. But the pre-seed, because we just closed the 1.5 mil little baby round venture pre-seed. Yeah. Yeah, it was cool. It was one of those cool things to do. So that was at the end of January. We closed that. And so now we've hired some more tech people, and it's all guns blazing. But pre-seed is very early, right? We have a fully functioning tech platform that has data sets in and use cases. But the business side so that's really quite far advanced. The business wrap and that part of building that business and the product led and everything is just not. So yeah, pre-seed is very early, I think, for a lot of corporates.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. But yeah, and how, and I'll just quickly highlight before moving into the question I wanted to ask you about the process of getting funding. But I think I just wanted to call out that I think a lot of people underestimate the setup that startups need in order to work with large corporates. The list of requirements is massive, as you were saying, like privacy and cybersecurity and insurance, and like there's so much not administrative burden, but there's so much policies, processes, structure that you need in order to understand the regulation as well. Like even before you can start work with a large company like this. So that's like amazingly, well done.
And it's something that I'm very aware of because I run the partnership program for Investa with startups. And what I would say is this is one of the things I really want to impact for startups is it's easy to get a pilot, right? Yep. Not easy. Well, it's relatively easy to get a pilot in something that feels safe. People can give you a clean, sanitized data set. You don't have to have your cyber in this and this and this, right? And it can be exciting. So we do this. And it can also look like false traction because it feels really great. Then we go to enterprise rollout. And I've sat across from, a lot of entrepreneurs with successful pilots hit the KPIs. And now we're looking at how do we roll across a portfolio or a fund or these sorts of things. And the answer is, here's your 700-line procurement, Excel spreadsheet, cyber, privacy, modern slavery, blah, blah. And the whites of their eyes because they're not ready for the blowtorch of corporate processes. And the thing is, it's table stakes. There's no amount of deal cutting, charisma, product, anything amazing that you can do that negates the fact that you need a cyber plan. And the thing is, a lot of those line items actually take 12 to 15 to 18 months to put in.
Yeah.
So at that moment when they're jumping to the rollout, that's where they look at you and they go, we don't have the runway. Yeah. And it's this feeling, guys, I have tears come to my eyes. It's this feeling of like, and so I've been now telling all the startups I work with at Investa, I give them that in the first coffee.
Exactly.
I'm like, exactly. And we're building a bunch of processes and templates at Investa that are the lightweight early adopter ones. So here's the enterprise MSA, but here's this one. Here's this one. We'll help you track to cyber. We'll help you. We've done all these risk workshops and built up this whole thing of why work with early startups as an enterprise. There's a lot of good reasons. What are the risks? Boom, 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 boom. How do we mitigate these risks and help the startups? So one of the things we did with Exomnia is, because I know this is coming, is we started the cyber before we even closed. So I hired Clive Bailey, who's our COO at Exomnia. We were the first hire beyond the founding team, and now he is part of the founding team, but came in, he was the prior chief information officer at Dexis, CIO at Perpetual. He's like the veteran. He's come in, he's brought in his another person, Tim, who's one of our GMs. They've started building to ISO, to NIST. We've got SOC 2. We've got literally the first expenditure. And one of the things about this and I have to justify it with the capital a lot, because they're going, well, where you are, you should be doing MVP Figma prototypes. Yeah. Not spending a lot of your capital on cyber private. The thing is I know what's coming. Exactly. And it's a non-negotiable. And so it looks odd, like we're building the startup in reverse, but I'm very clear that this is how we have to do it.
100%. Like, and I've seen it in the company that I work at, which is a health tech company, where one of the main investors is the foundational client. And as you said, like there's definitely like that muddies the waters. So I like that you created that separation. I was like, came in as like employee number 8 for this health tech company, but I signed on before the company existed. So they were kind of like finishing those conversations that you drove within Investa. And I've seen firsthand or had to lead the creation of that capability in order for us to service and plug into a regulated insurance entity. And then we've become almost like a middleman to get other startups.
Exactly, us too. Look, they plug in. Yep, that's an entire point. The entire point. Yep.
Going through again, getting them like up to speed, help them identify, fill the gaps where necessary. We take on some of the risk, and then through us, they can plug into large regulated entities like companies. And like we are kind of looking after like a lot of the security stuff, a lot of the privacy, insurance, like a lot of things. And I think it's something that most startup companies don't foresee. So I love the approach that you have in terms of putting that in front of them first, and for your company building it first. And in the company that I worked in, we did the same, where in the first year, one of our major deliverables was to get ISO certified, ISO 27001. And that was like a big push. And everyone was like, isn't that a bit early for you guys to be certified? It's like, without it, we can't play. That's to get on the table.
Right. That's right. And I love what you're saying, because that's my hypothesis, right? Because as we get more and more up the curve in the certification, and we're tracking to be able to work with defense, because we've got, some interest there, right, in terms of their portfolio. But you're exactly right. So my big protection of the other startups in prop tech is, don't do this. Come hook in to ours once we get it up. That way we can share the data up, and they can do whatever they do without ever having to take the data out of the environment. They can do it in Exomnia, generate their insights for their products, and then push it back through an entire middle layer. And that's where the data providers, which is why we're open sourcing the panels, we're open sourcing a lot of this so that the technical creators can come in and build. And the data providers can then leverage all that infrastructure, mix their external data with the internal. So that's exactly my hypothesis. So that's so cool you guys have done it, because I'm gonna have to pick your brain offline about then how you, because it's one thing to do it yourself, and then it's another, the agreement with the other group, right?
Exactly.
But that's my vision, is then I remove that pain for the startups and scale ups and data providers and analytics providers. They never have to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so in the industry that we play in, particularly in health insurance, the health insurers are regulated to have any companies that have the data, they need to comply with the same security regulations that go upon the health insurer, but then that applies to any downstream companies that have that data. And then the companies that we help work with health insurers are digital health apps.
Well, that's right.
Digital physiotherapy or digital mental health, things like that. And then, so we have to help them have the security levels in order to pass the regulation that's applied to the health insurers, and then privacy and etc. And then like we help them and control a lot of that in order to make it possible. And it definitely speeds up the process, but it's usually a big lift. It's just not as big as it would have been otherwise. But it sounds like in your setup, you're doing it in a way that is a smaller lift for the other companies when they work within your platform. And
well, I think and I think it's different, right? Because in the health, you're dealing with a lot of personal information, highly sensitive, also highly emotional charged data, right? Like, so there's what you're doing and talking about is really amazing to unlock innovation, because if I had this really passionate app that I wanted to, help people in terms of, help people in terms of making them better, and I was a doctor and I had this whole thing, the barrier is ridiculously insurmountable in health, right? Like, it's really hard. In real estate, it's not nearly as hard, because a lot of the data is not actually PII data at all. It's just commercially sensitive.
Yeah.
So it would be something like commercial terms of a lease, which people can get kind of sensitive about, definitely, but it's not the same thing. So I think what you're doing is really cool, because that there's a lot of people out there that can't do that and have amazing health app ideas. And it would stop me from even considering that sphere would be those data requirements. I would get
exactly. No, it's definitely a big lift. And then a part that we do is that we have algorithms that determine what people would benefit from, what interventions. So, and then we essentially plug them towards those interventions, but there's a consent process that goes back to the patient. So if the algorithm says this person would benefit from a digital physiotherapy intervention, which is on the less acute scale, then we can find a partner that has that, and then for the patient, they get the question, hey, we have a partner who can provide the service that we think you could benefit for. It's free for the patient. Would you like that? And here's the disclaimer that it's a third party and we'll have to share some of the data, blah, blah, blah. And we check that it's secure and private. And then if they agree, then they get plugged in. But we have kind of the evaluation frameworks, and also to then help us direct people to the care that they need. And then we bump them up and down as required. So then if they need parental help, we get them in a call with a nurse, and the nurse can coordinate further care from there. But that's kind of like how we manage it. So we de-identify data, and then the algorithms we build the algorithms to say what type of care people need. I
love that.
I love what you're doing. This is amazing. And what's looking forward? Like, what's coming ahead for Exomnia?
So it's really about. So we're starting in real estate. Obviously, the Exomnia engine is industry agnostic. And where I really, I mean, I've had the real estate subject matter expertise. It's the largest asset class in the world. And there's a huge amount of innovation to happen in that asset class. Where I'm particularly excited is within ESG, inside of real estate. And so what we're doing right now is we're creating these bundles and templates, because it's all template driven, with the pipelines and data sets just all there. So you don't even have to really think about it. You just pull down a resource pack around leasing, or you pour down a resource pack around research. So it's really that research as a service, research intelligence. Where I'm really excited is after we productize the ones we have, kind of the baseline of real estate. So you do strategy, you buy stuff, you lease it, you operate it, so all the sensor data, you sell it, and you get capital. So there's kind of like some things you do in real estate. The very next slice, which I have to hold myself back every single day and give it to myself as like a carrot in my brain, is ESG. And we've started some of it looking at the overlays, say for if you're valuing a building. There's already some ESG components, but let's look at all the data around ESG, not only the tenant commitments and their strategies on ESG, but everything, the net zero, the way that you actually do CapEx in order to, deliver on ESG outcomes, social criteria, all the data around modern slavery, affordable housing. We've done some affordable housing work. So we've done bits of it. What I'm really excited about is productizing a lot of that overlay of ESG onto the templates. But yeah, so it's about really providing those templates for people to democratize. So all of a sudden you're not, going back to Analyst Alley, burning your people for, 48 hours to get a new cut. The data engineering and data science teams actually get to do what they're good at instead of, changing the color or getting a new cut or, those sorts of things that we waste our best creative talent on. So there's all of those. What I would say is efficiency is just table stakes, to be honest. Like at this point, you should be cutting 50% of grit and time, cost, error out of that just by what we do, right? And that's really helpful in kind of this economic environment because people do need to get more efficient. Yeah. Where I kind of go, everyone gets excited about that. And I kind of go, to me, that's just a by the by. If we don't do that, what are we doing? So that's that one. And then the second one is, how do we now do what people normally do? And we do it in a way that's extremely granular. So if they're looking at, for example, tenant demand in an office building, they might look at white collar worker data in N number of cuts, 5, 10. Well, what about every industry? So it's about getting basically that hyper granularity, high definition, which is where the investment alpha is sitting. If you get better definition and granularity, you see different alpha. And that's just how that goes. And then the third one is expanding what you can see. So instead of looking at the 40 buildings you might be looking for leasing in, you have algorithms that look across every building. And so that's that really broad view. So I'm sort of thinking about it like everybody's watching old black and white, low-fi TV on a small screen, but we're going to give them hi-fi, so deep on a really big screen. And that just really allows the humans to then spend their time applying their expertise on it. And we're seeing it because we've been doing it for a while. I think the other exciting thing is the large language models and interacting with analytics through text. And that's really important, I think, from a democratization standpoint for non-technical users. Because how many times do you talk to someone who's, I'm not technical because their math teacher in 7th grade, scared them or something, or they made up for some reason. And they look at a graph and their mind goes fuzzy before they even, what is it? How does it work? So for me, the large language model interfaces, text interfaces, is a new UI that is less scary, basically. Yeah. And so we're building that prototype now, and there's a couple of different ways to do it. But one of the founding team members, Debo, he's a world expert at this, and there's a lot of text data in real estate. So It's actually a really great application for data extraction and aggregation as well out of documents and all those sorts of things to make it faster. So yes, Debo wrote a lot of, or co-authored a lot of the papers that are referenced by OpenAI. And so we're basically doing that piece. We're careful with that because you can get an answer that's really wrong. And especially in real estate where there's so many nuances that go into value, to pretend you can accurately get a price is just, well, one, you can't. And two, it wouldn't matter anyway because it's the market and how they bid. So it's a different game. But I remember I was talking to you a while ago. I remember you had this idea of taking pictures, right? Photographs, and then pulling data out of the full photographs and then aggregating that up. So like examples like that is really exciting because as we open source with Exomnia, it's a use case just like that I'd be saying, let's figure out a little test pilot, let's build, because it's now possible. There's a startup I met the other week. I can't remember their name. I'll get it for you for the show notes, but they basically are taking photos and turning them into plans, like floor plans.
Nice.
And then of course, they don't, you could go the next way, which you would know how to do and pull out the actual data measurements into a structured set. But things like that just unlock huge innovation because you can put them on Exomnia, monetize them for yourself as a creator, and we can blend them in with the other data sets into the templates. So that's a long, circuitous and rather, unpolished answer. But what I would say is there's a huge amount of opportunity and it's exciting.
Oh, super exciting. And I think that's such a big theme that has come out of our conversation is that the possibilities that are able to be unlocked through an industry that, has been or is going through a digitalization phase and then applying data science and AI to it with creative thinking, but bringing in the subject matter expertise that has been created and has driven the field for decades, like making sure that that's not forgotten or thrown out. I think that combination is super powerful, and the possibilities are extremely, extremely exciting. But it wouldn't be possible without the work that you've done and going through the journey that you shared. So I commend you for that. I think the vision and the courage and the perseverance is really inspirational. So thank you so much for doing that. Thank you so much for sharing that and for doing it in a way where you're from the get-go thinking about setting a precedent and sharing that journey in a way that other people can learn from it and understand what are the steps that it takes, how long it takes, what are the things to think about. That just opens so many minds to the possibility of doing something similar, looking at people's careers, people just think about their career. So overall, Joe, thank you so much. Always amazing to speak with you. Thank you so much for sharing all that with us.
Thank you very much. And I think it's one of those things that, if anyone listening is, if you think in the corner of your mind that you have, something like this that maybe you aren't asking your corporation about or your boss or, anyone about, but it's kind of sitting in your mind as something. Part of it is I wanted to set the precedent to how, but also just the precedent that it can be done. Yeah. Right. And not to say that every company will do it and not to say that every boss will support it or anything, but if we don't ask, then it doesn't. Had I not written that in my development plan in an audaciously naive way, we wouldn't be sitting here. So I think a lot of it is just sometimes we just ask, right? And the courage it even takes to ask, that to me is that first micro bit of courage where you think, oh, they're just going to shut it down or tell you you're stupid or naive or blah, blah. And they did none of that, right? But I could have easily not asked, and then that would be that.
Exactly. That was kind of like the lead domino that started the chain reaction.
It's cool. Well, thank you very much for this as always.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thanks for watching this video all the way to the end. I hope that you got a lot out of this discussion. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel. so more people can find out about the challenges that leaders have in the analytics and AI space. And that's what we're trying to share in Better Futurology. So please like and subscribe. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Thank you so much.